So glad that you're with us today to celebrate what is one of the most remarkable moments in human history, and that is the birth of Jesus. We're going to read from Luke's account of that, and it tells us, at that time, the Roman Emperor Augustus decreed that a census should be taken throughout the Roman Empire. This was the first census taken when Quirinius was governor of Syria. All returned to their own ancestral towns to register for the census, and because Joseph was a descendant of David, he had to go to Bethlehem in Judea, David's ancient home. He traveled there from the village of Nazareth in Galilee, and he took with him Mary, to whom he was engaged, who was now expecting a child. And while they were there, the time came for the baby to be born. She gave birth to her firstborn son. She wrapped him snugly in strips of cloth and laid him in a manger, because there was no lodging available for them. This whole Christmas season, we've been focused on a phrase that comes out of the Christmas carol, O Holy Night, and it is a thrill of hope. The weary world rejoices. The weary world rejoices. Not the well-rested world, not the world with lots of margin in its schedule. And this is one of the things I love about the Christmas story, is that it has weary people in it, and the Bible doesn't ignore it, and the Bible doesn't tell us that they're getting something wrong because they're tired. It's actually part of the Christmas story. So if you are tired tonight, welcome to the Christmas story. Scripture doesn't try to spin it in a special way or ask you to pray the tired away. It just shows us what God does in the middle of our weariness. Now, this story actually begins and it opens with mention of another person's name, and that's Caesar Augustus, which is kind of odd that you would start a story about Jesus by mentioning him. And Caesar Augustus wasn't born Augustus. That title means majestic, and that was given to him later on after he became the emperor of Rome. He was born Gaius Octavius, and he was adopted by his great uncle. You may have heard of him, Julius Caesar. And Julius Caesar, if you know anything about history, you know that he was assassinated. 60 senators participated in a plot, and they all took turns making sure he wouldn't live another day. And that's how that Caesar Augustus winds up assuming power. And he changes the empire, he changes Rome from a republic to an empire. It's going to look very different. He actually changes all the tax policy. This is one of those things. He changes currency. He changes all kinds of things. And he becomes one of the most dominant leaders in all of Roman history. In fact, if you were going to ask at that time, who's the most powerful person in the world, you would say Caesar Augustus. He would say that too, but you would say Caesar Augustus. And I love that in the middle of acknowledging that, Luke says that during the time of his reign, that's when Jesus was born. And Caesar issues a decree, and the decree means that people are going to have to do something to obey this. The decree is there's a census, and the way they're going to register you is you have to go to the town of your lineage. And so David, because he was of the ancestry, Joseph, because he was of the ancestry of David, had to go from Nazareth to Bethlehem, which if you draw a line is about 60 miles, but if you walk it, it's closer to 90 miles, just so everyone could be counted. Because there's just something about the way the kingdoms of the world work that everybody just becomes a number, a statistic. It's what empires do. They can reduce people. And so this makes it very difficult for an ordinary person. This is not convenient. They're going to have to take a long journey. And this is what fascinates me about this, is that Caesar thinks he is in control. People are having to move. They're having to travel. They're having to uproot and go somewhere else to be counted. And he thinks he's calling all the shots. But because of this decree, Joseph winds up in Bethlehem, the very place where a prophet decreed hundreds of years before that the Messiah would be born. So the question is, Who's really running things? By the way, that's not just a historical question, that's a spiritual question to think about right now. If our theology only works when our preferred person or party or system is in power, then we don't really understand the God of Scripture, because God has never been boxed in or boxed out by the world's kingdoms or the world's systems. He can turn a king's paperwork into a fulfilled prophecy. Isn't that amazing? And Joseph and Mary are not trying to fulfill a prophecy. They're just trying to get to Bethlehem. They're not preaching as they go. They didn't think they were making history. They were just trying to survive another week. They were tired, under-resourced, uncertain. The baby could be born on the way. And they were doing what they had to do because someone powerful told them they had to. And that's where we learn something really remarkable. I think we tend to overestimate the power of big decisions. And I think we underestimate the power of faithful consistency. The small, faithful things. Mary and Joseph just keep going. God didn't bypass Caesar, and he didn't bypass Joseph the carpenter. He's actually working through them. That doesn't mean he endorses Rome. It doesn't mean that he thinks all his policies are just. It's just simply this, that even people who do not seek God can unknowingly serve his purposes, not because their motives are pure, but because God refuses to stay in or out of any box we create. Now, Joseph could not change the world. He could not make the census go away. He couldn't make the command to travel any less, so he has to keep moving. He does the next right thing, which is two things. Keep moving, take care of Mary. Keep moving, take care of Mary. Stay steady when everything else feels unstable. I think that is a strength we don't celebrate enough in our world. A quiet courage, a steady obedience. If you have someone in your life like that, be grateful for them. And then God arrives. Not with shock and awe, not with armies, not with a spectacle, as a baby. The one who holds the universe would now have to be held. And Luke drops this piece of information to us that is important to hear. There was no lodging available for them, no room, not because anyone consciously rejected the coming of the Messiah or didn't want anything spiritual to happen in this season of their life. It's just that their lives were very full. Their town was packed. Everyone was busy. They were overwhelmed. They were maxed out. That's what hurry does to us. When our life is too full, we don't just lose margin, we lose awareness for things that are going on around us. Our attention span gets a little bit narrower, and our empathy starts shrinking. And we start closing doors, sometimes without realizing it. We just don't have room for that right now. At least not right now. Maybe later. And so Jesus is born in a borrowed corner of a barn. And his cradle is a feeding box for cattle. And the most important thing that ever happened in human history happens in a place that's not important. It happens in obscurity. This is how God entered our world, which raises a question, why? Why vulnerability over power? Why humility over spectacle? Why nearness over distance? Because if I were to ask you to choose between the presence tonight of vulnerability or invulnerability, which would you choose? If I were to ask you to choose between humility or notoriety, which would you choose? If I were to ask you to choose between nearness to the challenges that you face or some distance from the challenges you face, which would you choose? And I know what most of us would choose most of the time. But God chooses differently than us, and it's not because it's something just Christmas sentimentality. There's something more subversive about it than that. God is showing us that his kingdom does not come the way the kingdoms of the world come. He has not come to do what the kings of the world have done. His work is not limited to people who have lots of influence and lots of power and lots of resources. That the center of the universe, hear this, the center of the universe shows up in the margins of our world. So if you happen to feel a little marginalized right now, if you feel unseen, if you feel weary, Christmas is not just a story for other people. It's good news for you. And I don't think Luke is just telling us how Jesus was born then. I think he's also helping us see how Jesus can be born in us today. See, the Christmas story and the Christian story is not that we climb up to God through our achievement and our performance and our willpower, but it's rather that God comes down to us. And he doesn't enter through power, he enters through weakness. And he doesn't avoid or exempt himself from suffering, he absorbs it. And he does not wait for us to make room. He comes anyway. And that is grace. So why does God come, born in a barn, laid in a feeding box? Because God is not trying to impress you. He's trying to reach you. And that's two very different strategies. And right now, even if we feel like our schedule is full, and I know yours is. In fact, some of you are wondering, how long is he going to talk? I've got places to go. I've got things to do. I've got people coming to the house. If your life doesn't feel calm right now, that's okay. If your heart doesn't feel ready right now, it's okay. If your house feels more like chaos and loud than calm and quiet, that's okay, because Jesus has a way of being born in places that we don't think we're ready for or we don't think are worthy of him. That is hope. And you've never seen hope that's actually fragile. Hope is one of the strongest things our world has ever known. In just a few moments, we're going to light some candles. And when we do, just pay attention to what happens. One flame becomes many. Light is not diminished because we share it with someone else. It actually multiplies. And as that light spread from candles to candle, it is also a picture of hope filling our world, one light or life at a time. A thrill of hope. It's not fragile. It grows, it spreads, and it pushes back the dark. Merry Christmas.